Okay, so everybody, go ahead and open your religion book to page 50. And we're going to read a story called The Difficult Choice. This is where you'll use what we've learned in this chapter about temptation and original sin, and you are going to come up with an ending to this story. So as I'm reading and you're following along, I want you to put yourself in the main character John's place and think about the choice that he has to make. We're not going to read about the choice he makes. We're going to read about what leads to that, but then in the end, you are going to finish the story the way that you think John should, or with the choice you think John should make. So as you're reading, I want you to be thinking, what would you do if you were John? How would you end this story? What choice would you have John make, and why would you have him make that choice? So as you're reading, think of yourself as John and what choice you would make if you were in the situation and why you would make that choice. Okay. Make sure that you're using your finger or a bookmark to follow along. If you don't have a bookmark out already, then please just use your finger. Remember, when you're using your finger to follow along, you're pointing at each word as I read it. Not just in the general area of where we are, but you're actually following along. Each word you point to. Okay, so make sure you're on page 50 and make sure you are following along with your finger or a bookmark. The Difficult Choice. It was a beautiful, sunny spring day. Andy, Mark, and John had to stay inside during recess and finish their science projects. Their teacher, Mrs. Brown, had warned the class about what would happen if they didn't have their work done on time. But the three boys hadn't listened. That sounds familiar. They chose to wait until the last minute to do their science projects, and they ran out of time. While the boys worked, Mrs. Brown wrote that night's homework assignment on the board, as she always did. Andy worked especially hard. He knew he had put off doing his work, and he knew he had better finish this project or he would be in trouble. Andy had already been to the principal's office several times because he had not behaved in class. He had drawn pictures and written notes on the board several times. If he got in trouble again, his parents would ground him for sure. Mark and John usually got their work done on time, but with the beautiful spring weather, they had been busy playing baseball. Mark and John were best friends, and they played baseball together all the time. That's what they had planned to do at recess. John knew it was his own fault he had to stay in for recess, but Mark was really angry. Of all days for Mrs. Brown to keep them in. Andy received permission to go to the lavatory. That's a bathroom. I don't know why they use that word, but the bathroom. After he left, Mrs. Brown told Mark and John that she was going to the library to get a book and that she would be right back. She asked Mr. Carson, the other fourth grade teacher, to look in on the boys. When Mrs. Brown left, Mark quickly went up to the board, erased the homework assignment, and wrote no homework in its place. He was back at his desk working when Mr. Carson checked on the boys. As Mr. Carson was leaving, Andy returned and went back to his desk. He looked at the board to see how much homework Mrs. Brown had given them. When he saw no homework on the board, Andy knew Mrs. Brown would suspect him because of the times he had written on the board before. Andy went up to the board to erase no homework. Just as he got up to the board, Mrs. Brown walked in. What do you think she's going to think? Carla.
She thought that...
Or what do you think she's going to think? Don't read ahead. Don't tell me what... You haven't read ahead, have you? What do you think she's going to think?
She might think that Andy had written on the board, then was about to erase it.
Good. She might think that Andy was the one written on the board. Why do you think she's going to think that Andy is the one who wrote on the board? Zadie.
Because what we just read said she was walking in, and he was still up at the board trying to erase it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay, so that's one reason, because he's standing up near the board as she walks in. What's another reason that she might think Andy's the one who wrote it instead of just doing what he's doing, which is erasing? Michaela?
because he's done it before.
He got in trouble for doing it before. Let's see what happens. Let's see what John has to make a choice about. We're still not sure. We already know one wrong choice he made. What was one wrong choice that we already know John made in this story? Carla, what was one wrong choice that happened maybe even before we started reading, but we know he made it?
He might have had been.
No, this is not a might. This is a wrong choice we know he made. He's already made a wrong choice.
He erased the homework assignment and wrote no homework.
It wasn't John that did that. John didn't do that. That was Mark. Victoria, what wrong choice do we know John has already made?
He gets in trouble a lot, and
Not John. You got to keep this story. Andy's the one that gets in trouble a lot. But John made a wrong choice before we even started this story. What was the wrong choice that John made? Kingston.
he didn't finish
He didn't finish his
his assignment.
science project. He chose to do what instead? Kingston, what did he choose to do instead? Ethan, what did he choose to do instead?
He chose to wait until the last minute.
He chose to wait until the last minute because he was too busy doing what? Aaron, help him out.
Playing baseball.
He was too busy playing baseball with Mark. They both made that wrong choice. They chose to play baseball instead of getting their work done. Now, we already know the consequence. What was the consequence of that choice? Colin,
They had to finish their science project.
when? That's not a consequence. That's just an assignment. But what was the consequence?
Oh, they weren't allowed to go outside and play with them.
They had to finish it instead of going to recess. Okay, well now, so we still don't know what John's choice is that we have to decide. We know he's already made a wrong choice. Before this even started, he chose to put off his homework till the last minute. The consequence was now he has to do it during recess. Remember, Andy is the one who has been getting in trouble a lot this week. Mark is the one who chose to erase the homework and write no homework. John is just there. But we know John is the one, we're putting ourselves in his place. Okay, find where we are. We are at, she noticed the words written. We just finished reading. Just as he got up to the board, Mrs. Brown walked in. So everybody use your finger to find where we are. Don't play with that, Kingston. And let's keep reading. If I'm reading out loud, that means you're following along. I can hear that some people are not following along because I can hear it in your answers. Just as he got up to the board, Mrs. Brown walked in. She noticed the words written on the board in place of the homework assignment. Andy told Mrs. Brown that he hadn't written on the board and that he didn't know who had. Mrs. Brown told Andy she was sorry, but his parents would have to be called and his pranks would have to stop. Andy figured it was no use arguing because he had written on the board other times, so he just sat at his desk. Meanwhile, the rest of the class came in from recess as Mrs. Brown was rewriting the homework assignment. Mark worked at his desk with a little smirk on his face because he had gotten away with his prank, or he had gotten by with his prank, and Andy had been blamed for it. John, however, sat thinking. John knew that Mark had erased the homework assignment and had written no homework instead. John had watched Mark do it. John also knew that Andy was really in a lot of trouble this time. Andy was going to be punished for something Mark had done. John didn't know what to do. He didn't want Andy to get in trouble for something he didn't do. He also didn't want to tell on Mark, who was his best friend. Besides, if he told on Mark, Mark probably wouldn't be his friend anymore. Or maybe John should encourage Mark to tell Mrs. Brown the truth about what he did. Okay, so now you know what the choice is. What is John's choice? What is John's choice that he has to make? Aaron, loudly so we can all hear you.
He has a choice of telling on Mark,
Who is his what?
best friend,
Mm-hmm.
or he has a choice of
So that's one of his choices. He could choose to tell on Mark, who's his best friend. What's the other choice? Zari.
Or he can just keep quiet.
Mm-hmm. Or he can just keep quiet. Why is that choice hard? Why is that choice so hard? Ethan.
because Mark is John's best friend and Andy and John doesn't want Andy to get in trouble.
Good. So it's hard because Mark is John's best friend. So he's afraid if he tells on Mark, Mark's not going to want to be friends anymore. But it's also hard because he doesn't want Andy to get in trouble for something he didn't do. Especially because this time it would be big trouble. Because you know, if you keep getting in trouble, the consequences get worse and worse and worse and worse. Well, he's at that point where it is worse and worse and worse and worse. So that's the choice he has to make. So now let's look at these questions on page 51. Number 1 says, if John helped Andy, he would betray his best friend Mark. John had to make a choice. What would be the right thing for John to do? So you're going to answer that. But let's talk about number 2, because I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to answer both questions, because number 2 will take a little bit longer. Number 2 says, put yourself in John's place and think about the choice he has to make. What would you do if you were John? Finish the story telling the choice John makes and why he makes the choice he does. So number 1, you know the choices. You have to say which one's the right one, no matter what you would rather do. You have to say, for number 1, you have to say what is the right choice. Complete sentences. Number 2, you are writing the end of the story. You are saying, if you were John, I'm John. Here's the choice I'm making. This is why I'm making it. You need to write in complete sentences. Number 1 only requires one sentence. What's the right choice? Complete sentence. Number 2 requires at least 2 sentences. 1 sentence of the choice that John makes. You're writing this. And second sentence, John makes this choice because blah, blah, blah. Does everybody understand what to do? Yes, Zari.
So we don't lose. So John makes his choice in the book. So can you now hear me?
Yes, I can. I couldn't earlier, but now I can. But I was still making that face. Sorry.
So we don't have to actually say like, so he's gonna tell like that. We have to do that.
You're just basically writing the end of the story. So you're coming up you're just writing the end of the story. But you have to say what choice he made and why he made it. If you would like to say what happened because of that choice, go ahead. But you only have to say what choice does John make? Why does he make that choice? So does everybody understand what to do? If you would like to add more saying what happens because of that choice, that's fine. If you run out of space, you can use an extra sheet of paper. That's up to you. Okay, number 1, what is the correct choice? Number 2, pretend like you're the author and you're ending the story. What choice did John make? Why did he make that choice? If you have time or would like to add an ending, what happens because of that choice? Remember, if you need a separate sheet of paper, if you run out of space, use an extra sheet of paper. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, you're going to have 10 minutes. That means if you finish number 1 and 2 really quickly, go ahead and add more to the ending of the story. So, everybody should have finished the questions on page 51. Remember, number 1, You were answering what is the right choice. There were two choices John could make. And you were saying which one was the right choice. There was a right choice and there was a wrong choice. Number 2 was just up to you. What choice do you think John made? Why did he make that choice? What was the result? So, number 1. Victoria. What would the right thing for John to do be?
I think John fell on Mark. So Andy does not get in trouble because he did not.
Correct. The right choice is to either tell Mrs. Brown that it wasn't Andy or to convince Mark to tell Mrs. Brown that he was the one who had done it. That is the right choice. So you needed to have either John tells Mrs. Brown or John convinces Mark to tell Mrs. Brown. If you have John doesn't say anything as the answer for number 1, that is incorrect. Okay, number 2. Now we'll get a few different people. So basically what you're going to do for number 2 is I'm going to pick a stick and you're just going to read me what you said. Maybe I'll even have you come up front and read it if you're at school so that the girls at home can hear you. And then those of you at home will be able to hear you. Because let me make sure the volume's up. Okay. So, Colin, you're close enough. Just read loud.
Okay.
Read loud. What did you put? What's the ending to the story? If you want to be in the video, you can come stand right here.
I'm good.
If you want to be in the video, you can come up and I'll just scoot over. But read loud so that we can still hear you.
John should tell on Mark because Mark was the one that wrote no homework on the board, but Mrs. Brown thinks it was Andy.
And what happened because he chose to tell Mrs. Brown. What happened?
John will not be Mark's best friend anymore.
Okay, that's what Colin decided. Okay. Zari, how did you end the story? So just read me your answer.
John told Mrs. Brown privately and told her Mark wrote no homework on the board. Mark's parents were very, very, very mad and got in trouble. So then Mark didn't like John anymore.
Okay. Okay. Smith, tell us how your story ended.
John told on Mark because he did something bad, and John would help Andy. John tells on Mark and Andy. John tells on Mark, and Andy is not in trouble anymore. He does this because he realizes Andy is better than Mark.
Okay. Ethan, you want to come up here and read for the video how your story ended? Or do you want to stay there but read real loud? It's up to you. Okay, real loud so that the girls at home can hear and the video can pick up your voice. So just read your answer. Just read it out loud. Hmm?
It's not
What? I can't hear you.
It's not right.
What choice did John make in your story? Okay, and why did he make that choice? So he made the right choice to tell the teacher. Why did he make that choice in your story? So Andy wouldn't get in trouble, okay? And in your story, what happened because John told the teacher? Okay, you were supposed to write a sentence about that, so think of a sentence right now. What happened? Michaela, tell us your ending. Do you want to come up here and read it? Okay, read loud.
John should tell
A little louder.
Mark. John should tell on Mark because it wasn't right for Mark to write no homework on the board.
Okay, and then what happened? Because remember, you weren't telling what his choice should be. You were supposed to end the story. John made this choice. He made it because of this. This is what happened. So what happened because John made the choice to tell Mrs. Brown in your story? Do you have that? Okay, be thinking of that right now. Carla, how does your story end?
John will get up and ask the teacher to talk to Mark. He will convince Mark to tell the teacher that he had wrote no homework, and the teacher will be proud. So when John tells the teacher and tell Mark to convince the teacher,
Confess.
Mark will still be his friend.
Good. Good. I like how you said Mark would still be his friend. Because in real life, when someone tells on you and it's your best friend, yeah, you get mad at them. Even if they were right to tell on you. But think about it. This has probably happened to all of you at some point. Are you really not friends with the person anymore? Or are you just mad at them for a little bit and then you get over it and you're friends again? Zadie? Yeah, you get mad for a little bit that they tattled or they told on you, even if they should have done it. But you stay friends after. Most of the time you just forget. Yes, Kingston.
That very same thing happened at St. Patrick's, but I was the one who was telling.
So Kingston said the same thing happened. But he was John. And he told. And did that person forgive you eventually?
I don't remember.
You don't remember. Probably. Does anybody want to read their story who has not had a chance yet? Okay, so everybody. Let's see, we'll do Zadie, Victoria, Aaron. Zadie, do you want to come up front and do it? Or do you want to stay at your seat? Okay, read loud so everybody can hear.
John would tell on Mark, and then Andy would not get in trouble.
Blah, blah, blah.
But Mark will. The reason Mark got in trouble is because he wrote on the board no homework. A life lesson everyone should know is your actions can cause consequences or congratulations. Always take responsibility for your actions.
Good. Okay. And what happened in your story because John made that choice?
He got in trouble with his teacher. Well, Mark did.
Okay. Victoria, do you want to come up front or do you want to read from there? Okay.
John walked up to the
Louder.
John walked up to the teacher and told her what happened. He did it because Andy should not be in trouble. Mark should be in trouble. Mark heard what John said to the teacher. Mark told John that you did the right thing. I am not going to talk to you for a little while, but I'll still be your friend.
Okay, good. Very good. Okay, Aaron, do you want to stay there and read loud or do you want to come up front? Okay. This chair is like staticky, so it's just constantly shocking me.
John chooses to tell on his friend. Mark did it and Andy got blamed. John made the right choice by doing that. Mark is mad now.
Okay, good. Yes, most of us in that situation would hopefully make the right choice. And our friend may be mad at us for a little bit. But if they're a true friend, are they going to stay mad forever? No. They're either going to understand why you did what you did eventually, or they're just going to forget about it. And they're going to be your friend again. Very good. Okay, so if you did not finish in a few minutes. But right now, everybody, let's look at the bottom of page 51. We're going to read that together. So now we're going to talk about sin and forgiveness. Zadie, please read first. Read just up until, start with the little subtitle, and then read until the purple box. I'll read the purple box.
I'm gonna put my facial on.
Just read loud, like yell.
Sin and forgiveness. Sometimes we fail to love as we should. Sometimes we are selfish. We give in to our weaknesses and we choose to sin. Sin is knowing something is wrong and choosing to do it anyway.
Very good. So yes, that's what we've been talking about this whole chapter. Sometimes we fail to love God, ourselves, or others as we should. That is called sin. When we know there's a right or wrong choice, we know there may be consequences to the wrong choice. We know there may not be consequences to the wrong choice, but we know it's the wrong choice and we decide to do it anyway. That is sin. Now I'll read this purple box, but follow along with me. We know that by sin the Lord is offended. Friendship with him is broken. His grace is lost. One strays from the right path, heading for ruin. Committing sin, we are far from God, against God, without God. That's a quote by St. John Paul II from his book or collection of writings called You Are My Favorites. So again, we know every time we sin, we turn a little bit more away from God. Now, we don't necessarily turn all the way away, but we do turn away from him. We know that it damages our friendship with God. Read next, below the purple box, Aaron, loud and slow. Yell.
When we do sin, God still loves us. When we sin, we should tell God we are sorry and ask him to forgive us.
Try it. There you go, loudly.
We should tell God we are sorry and ask him to forgive us in the sacrament of reconciliation.
Do you guys have a prayer?
It says follow the prayer.
The following prayer. Do you have a prayer on the back?
Yes.
Oh, it does. Okay, sorry, I got confused. Okay, so Aaron, go ahead and read that. That last sentence. The very last sentence.
The following prayer is based on
Remember that P is silent in this book of the Bible.
The following prayer is
Got it.
based on Psalm 25. It's Psalm asking God for guidance and forgiveness.
Good. Okay, let's read the prayer. This is the prayer for guidance and help. Oh, Mason's not here. Whoops. Kingston, read that first little stanza of the prayer. A stanza is basically like a paragraph in like a song or a poem or a prayer. Okay, so go ahead, read that first little stanza, that first group of words on page 52. This is the prayer for guidance and help. Loud, like you're yelling.
To you I lift up my soul, O Lord my God. In you I trust.
Read the next stanza. Which is 52 again. Ethan, loudly, like you're yelling.
Help me to know and follow your ways, O Lord. Guide me in the truth and to truth, for you are God and Savior.
Okay, a little slow next time. That's me. I've already read. Zari, read the next stanza of the prayer.
You are compassionate and kind. In your goodness, do not remember my sins and my weaknesses.
Make sure you're following along on page 52. Thank you, Zari. Victoria, read the next stanza. Loud, like you're yelling.
You are honest and good. O Lord, you show sinners the way. You guide
Michaela, read the next stanza loud, like you're yelling.
You offer your friendship to those who slow you
Not
great,
slow. Who?
show you great love and respect. You free from sin. Those who look towards you, O Lord, and you instruct,
Not instrust, but instruct.
instruct and guide them.
Zadie, read next.
Look toward me and have pity on me. O Lord, my heart is deeply troubled, and I am in great distress.
And read the last stanza. Aaron.
Remove my troubles and suffering and take away all my sins. Protect me, Lord. I trust in your love and care.
Good. So, anytime where you are having to make a choice, or you know that you made a choice that wasn't a good one, you can say this prayer on page 52, and God will help you by either he will help you to understand that maybe you made the wrong choice and next time needs to be a different one. Okay, so remember this is our last lesson on Thursday, first thing Thursday morning after Mass. We will take our test on chapter 5 of religion. It is not open book, so that means you can start bringing it home tonight to start studying. Remember, this chapter was all about original sin. It was all about Adam and Eve and the results of that sin. Remember, we talked about Cain and Abel and how Cain's actions, where he killed his brother, were a result of Adam and Eve's sin. We also talked about temptation and all of that. Remember, every test we've taken, there's been at least one question that comes from page 43, the concepts of faith. So make sure that you really study page 43. Also make sure that you understand the story of Adam and Eve and the original sin, the story of Cain and Abel. Make sure you really understand what temptation is, and what original sin is, and how we have choices. How sin is not, does anybody ever make us sin? Does anybody ever force us to sin? Sorry, please think about the question. Don't just look for other people's reactions. Does anyone ever force us to sin? Who is the person who makes us sin? Michaela. Ourselves. Other things may tempt us, but is tempting the same thing as forcing? No. Tempting is just making it look like a good choice. But we know which one is the good and the bad choice. Okay, any questions about all of chapter 5? Victoria.
So, when I was driving to school today, I saw this, other church right next to my house.
Okay.
And it had a sign with a chalice and with an X on it. So, I saw this sign inside my church, and there's a chalice on it, a red chalice, and
With an X on it?
there was an X on it, and it was white. And I was like, hey, Mom, is that an X from Cain, the mark of God? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, I think it is, because it looks exactly like the one in the book. It's just that, it's cut off on it.
It could be. Did you guys at home hear what Victoria said? So she said near her house is a church, and on their sign they have a red chalice, what the body or what the blood comes in that the priest drinks out of during communion. And it had a red chalice with a white X on it. And so she said, that looks a lot like the symbol from her book that God put on Cain's head to show that he was protected by God. So she asked her mom, and her mom wasn't sure. I'm not actually sure either. I never thought about that before. But find out what kind of church it is. What is it?
It's also where you go.
Well, yeah, but a lot of churches do that. Is it find out, is it Episcopalian? Is it Presbyterian? Is it Baptist? I don't think it's Catholic, because I know that is a symbol of one of those groups. Is it Grace St. Luke's? Do you remember the name of the church?
I'll look at it tomorrow.
Yeah, so find out what it is and then you can look it up. What does the Methodist church symbol mean? But whatever kind of church it is. Like, is it Methodist? Is it Baptist? Is it Presbyterian? Is it Episcopalian? Is it Anglican? Is it Lutheran? Something like that. And then you can Google, what does the blank sign mean? The symbol. And then you can actually find out, is that the symbol of Cain? It could be. Definitely could be. I'm not really sure. Okay, Zadie.
And in the story of Cain and Abel, didn't Adam and Eve have other children?
Yes. I think. I'm pretty sure. Kingston.
Like, this isn't one of the.
Louder so we can all hear you, including me.
This is related with the what you had said before Victoria.
Uh-huh.
Could you say those again?
Say what? The names of the churches? The types? It's not really the religions. They're just the
They sound like house.
denomination. Anglican, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, Catholic. I know it's not Catholic though. What else did I say?
Because I go to this church.
Yeah, and it's that's not I know that it's a symbol. I've seen it on other churches, but I can't remember what denomination they are. There's also Church of Christ, Pentecostal, all those. But I think it's either Methodist, Presbyterian, or Episcopalian.
Don't sound bad.
Well, it's not the same thing, but I can't remember. Okay, Zadie, quickly, then we're gonna move on to social studies.
My grandmother, we used to go to a church, but before COVID, that was Methodist, and they had a sign like that on, like one of the signs they put out.
And it's like a red chalice with a white, yeah, it might be, but check to be sure. Because I think it's one of those. It's either Methodist, Presbyterian, or Episcopal. I'm leaning towards either Methodist or Episcopal. I can't remember. So look at it tomorrow and see, and then you can Google it. What does their sign mean? And then it'll tell you if it's a symbol, the symbol of Cain.
I think my mom knows the name of the church.
Well, you can ask her too. She probably does if it's near your house. Okay, but you can look it up on the internet.
I can literally just like go outside.
Okay, so now what we're gonna do, these quick questions about chapter 5. Carla and Kingston, are they quick questions about chapter 5 of religion? Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and move on to social studies. We have you get to do this extra credit study guide. You can start it, maybe even finish it at school. If you do not finish it at school, you can take it home. Make sure that you do well on it. Some of you need to make a 100. Some of you, if you do not make 100 on it, it is pretty much, don't even try. But every single answer in this study guide is in the book. It may not be word for word, but it will be in a sentence that means pretty much the same thing. It is on all of chapter 3. But it does tell you specifically where to look for these things. But remember, tomorrow on your test, it's not going to tell you exactly where to look. So use this as an opportunity to get really comfortable with where all the information is in your textbook. That's why it's a study guide, so that it will help you find where all of the information is in your textbook, so that you have it, so that you are ready for tomorrow. You will also take your social studies book home and study tonight, but this is your chance to really help you understand where all the information is in your textbook. Because this study guide is separated into lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. Again, it will help you so that you know where the important information is in your textbook, so that tomorrow when you get to a question on Central America, you remember, oh, Central America is in lesson 3. Okay. Any questions? Yes, Zari. Oops.
So we have to do it.